Vela read the transfer orders 3 times. She was certain there had been a mistake. 40 years she had served in the Galactic Wildlife Preservation Corps. 40 years of dangerous fieldwork on death worlds across the galaxy. She had tracked creatures that could kill with a glance. She had survived encounters that left other officers in medical bays for months. And now, the Corps wanted her to babysit a human. She walked to Captain Dren's office with the orders clutched in her 4 hands. The Gorath commander looked up from his desk, his massive bear-like form barely fitting in the standard chair. His dark eyes showed no surprise at her arrival. "You've seen the orders," he said. It was not a question. "There must be an error," Vela said. "Humans have only been part of the galactic community for 12 years. They have no experience with preservation work. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. They are soft and emotional, and they break easily." Dren leaned back. His chair groaned under his weight. "The orders come from Central Command. The human arrives tomorrow. You will train him and evaluate him. That is final." Vela wanted to argue more, but she knew that look in the captain's eyes. She turned and left without another word. That night she researched humans on the galactic database. What she found did not impress her. They came from a mid-sized planet called Earth. They had no special abilities. Their senses were average at best. They could not see in the dark. They could not hear frequencies outside a narrow range. They were not particularly fast or strong. The only notable entry mentioned something called endurance, but the details were vague and unhelpful. She closed the database and prepared herself for disappointment. The transport ship arrived at midday. Vela stood at the landing pad with several other officers. A young Gorath named Torvin laughed openly as the humans stepped off the ramp. "This is what Central Command sent us?" Torvin said. "It looks like it would die from a strong wind." Vela had to admit the human was unimpressive. He was average height for his species, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore the standard trainee uniform, which hung slightly loose on his frame. He carried a single bag over one shoulder. He moved slowly, looking around the station with quiet interest. His name was Park Tai-sung. He was 24 years old. He had applied to the Corps 3 times before being accepted. His file said he was patient and observant. Vela thought those were polite words for slow and passive. "Welcome to Theta 7 Preservation Station," she said, keeping her voice professional. "I am Senior Officer Vela. I will be your mentor and evaluator during your training period." Tai-sung bowed slightly. "Thank you for accepting me, Senior Officer. I look forward to learning." His voice was soft and calm. Too calm, Vela thought. Most new arrivals showed excitement or nervousness. This human showed nothing. His face was pleasant, but unreadable. She led him through the station, explaining the facilities and protocols. He listened without interrupting. He asked only a few questions, all of them thoughtful and specific. When they passed the research wing, he stopped at a display showing local predators. "These are the Vrex," he said, studying the image of a 6-limbed horror with razor teeth and poison spines. "Yes, apex predators. They have killed more preservation officers than any other species on this planet. We avoid them whenever possible." Tai-sung nodded slowly. "Has anyone studied their behavior patterns? Their hunting methods?" "Several officers have tried. None of them lived long enough to complete their research." She expected fear. She expected the human to step back from the display, to show some sign of the survival instinct that all sensible species possessed. Instead, he simply continued studying the image with that same quiet expression. "Interesting," he said. Vela felt a small chill run through her thorax. She did not understand why. The evening meal was awkward. The other officers whispered and pointed at the human. Torvan made jokes about how long the trainee would last. Tai-sung ate his food in silence, apparently unbothered by the attention. Only one person at the station seemed happy to see him. Yunhana was the human communications officer. She had been stationed at Theta 7 for 3 years. Vela had always found her competent but unremarkable. Now, Hana sat across from Tai Sung with a knowing smile on her face. "First human in the Corps," Hana said. "How does it feel?" "Heavy," Tai Sung replied, "but necessary. Someone had to be first." Hana nodded as if this answer meant something significant. Vela watched the exchange with confusion. There seemed to be an entire conversation happening beneath the words, one that she could not understand. After dinner, Vela retired to her quarters to write her initial evaluation report. She chose her words carefully, trying to be fair despite her doubts. Subject shows no obvious physical advantages. Demeanor is passive and subdued. Survival instincts appear underdeveloped. Recommend close supervision during all field activities. Preliminary assessment. Unlikely to complete training program. She saved the report and prepared for sleep. But something nagged at her mind. Something about the human bothered her, and she could not identify what. She decided to take a walk to clear her thoughts. The station's observation deck offered a view of the jungle below. Theta 7 was beautiful in a deadly way. Bioluminescent plants glowed in the darkness. Distant creatures called to each other with sounds that could freeze blood. Vela stopped when she reached the deck. Someone was already there. Tai Sung stood at the railing, perfectly still. He stared into the dark jungle below. He did not move when she approached. He did not acknowledge her presence at all. He simply stood there, watching the darkness with those calm, unreadable eyes. Vela watched him for a long moment. Then she returned to her quarters. 3 hours later, she could not sleep. She went back to the observation deck. Tai Sung was still there. He had not moved. He stood in exactly the same position, staring at exactly the same spot. His breathing was slow and deep. His body was completely relaxed. But his eyes never stopped watching. Something cold settled in Vela's stomach. She had seen this behavior before. She had seen it in the predators she studied. The absolute stillness. The patient watching. The complete focus on something only they could see. She returned to her quarters and did not sleep at all that night. In the morning, she added a single line to her evaluation report. She did not know why she wrote it. She did not understand what it meant. Additional note: subject displays unusual capacity for stillness. Requires further observation. She saved the file and tried to forget the image of the human standing motionless in the dark, watching the jungle like he was waiting for something to emerge. Or like he was deciding whether to go in. The first field training began at dawn. Vela had planned a simple perimeter survey. They would walk the outer boundary of the protected zone, check the sensor equipment, and document any wildlife activity. It was basic work, designed to let new trainees experience the jungle environment without real danger. She expected the human to struggle. The jungle of Theta 7 was dense and difficult. The air was thick with moisture. The ground was uneven and covered with roots that could trip even experienced officers. Most trainees spent their first field day stumbling and sweating and jumping at every sound. Tai Sung moved through the jungle like he had been born there. Vela watched him with growing confusion. He did not stumble. He did not hesitate. He stepped over roots and around obstacles without looking down, as if his body knew where to move without his mind telling it. His breathing stayed slow and even. His eyes moved constantly, scanning the trees, the shadows, the spaces between leaves. "You have done this before," Vela said. It was not a question. "I grew up near mountains," Tai Sung replied. "Forests were my playground as a child." This explained some things, but not everything. The way he moved was not just practiced. It was something deeper, something instinctive. They reached the first sensor station without incident. Vela checked the equipment while Tae-sung stood guard. She noticed that he had positioned himself with his back to a large tree, giving him a clear view of all approach angles. Standard defensive positioning. Nobody had taught him to do that. "Where did you learn combat tactics?" she asked. "I did not," he said. "I just do not like having my back exposed." They continued along the perimeter. The jungle grew thicker as they moved away from the station. Strange sounds echoed through the trees. Most trainees would have asked questions by now. "What was that noise? Is that animal dangerous? Should we turn back?" Tae-sung asked nothing. He simply observed and adapted. When the sounds grew closer, he adjusted his pace. When shadows moved in the trees, his hand drifted toward his equipment belt. He never seemed afraid. He seemed aware. The attack came at the 4th sensor station. A sketh burst from the underbrush with a shriek that would have frozen most species in place. The creature was the size of a large dog, covered in scales and spines. Its mouth was filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. It was not an apex predator, but it had killed plenty of careless officers over the years. Vela's training took over. She jumped back, reaching for her deterrent spray. The standard protocol for sketh encounters was clear. Create distance, deploy deterrent, retreat to safety. Running triggered their chase instinct, but controlled retreat could convince them to find easier prey. She was already spraying when she realized Tae-sung had not moved. The human stood perfectly still. He faced the sketh directly, his body relaxed but balanced. His hands hung at his sides. He did not reach for any weapon. He simply looked at the creature with those calm brown eyes. The sketh stopped its charge. It skidded on the forest floor, confused by the response. Every instinct told the creature that prey should run, prey should scream, prey should show fear. This creature was doing none of those things. The sketh circled to the left. Tae-sung turned slowly, keeping the predator in front of him. His movements were smooth and unhurried. He never broke eye contact. The sketh circled to the right. Tae-sung matched its movement. Still calm, still watching, still showing nothing that looked like fear. 30 seconds passed. The sketh made a sound that Vela had never heard before. It was almost a whine. Then it turned and disappeared into the jungle. Vela's hearts were pounding. Her hands shook as she lowered the deterrent spray. She had faced sketh before, but she had never seen one simply give up. They were aggressive hunters. They did not retreat without a fight. "What did you do?" she demanded. Tae-sung finally looked at her. His expression had not changed at all. "I did nothing." "You stood there. You did not run. You did not use your equipment. You just stood there." "Yes." "The sketh should have attacked. You should be dead." Tae-sung tilted his head slightly. The sketh was testing. It was not committed to a real attack. Its charge was meant to trigger a fear response. When I did not run, it became uncertain. When I maintained eye contact, it recognized that I was not prey. Vela stared at him. "How did you know it was testing?" "The angle of approach, the timing of the sounds before the charge, the way it kept its weight balanced for a quick retreat." He shrugged. "Predators have patterns. Once you learn to read them, their intentions become clear." "Where did you learn to read predator patterns?" Tae-sung did not answer immediately. He looked back at the jungle where the sketh had disappeared. "Humans have been living alongside predators for a very long time. We learned to understand them. We had to." Vela wanted to ask more questions, but something in his tone suggested that the conversation was over. They completed the perimeter survey in silence. That evening, word spread through the station. The human trainee had faced a sketh without weapons and survived. Most officers laughed and said it was luck. The sketh must have been young or sick. No one could stare down a predator through sheer will. But Vela noticed that Captain Dren did not laugh. He sat in the corner of the mess hall, watching the human with an expression she could not read. Interest, curiosity, perhaps something else. After dinner, Tae-sung went to the observation deck again. Vela found him there an hour later, standing in the same spot as the night before, watching the jungle, waiting. She stood beside him for a while without speaking. The jungle sounds filled the silence between them. "The Vrex," Tae-sung said finally. "How do they hunt?" "In packs. They coordinate attacks from multiple angles. They are intelligent enough to set traps and ambushes. No officer has ever survived a direct Vrex encounter." "Has anyone tried to communicate with them? To understand their social structure?" "Communication requires proximity. Proximity means death." Tae-sung nodded slowly. "Someone should try anyway." "That would be suicide." The human turned to look at her. In the dim light of the observation deck, his eyes seemed different, deeper, older. "The greatest discoveries always require someone willing to take risks that others consider foolish." He returned to watching the jungle. Vela stood beside him for another hour, trying to understand what she was seeing. A trainee who should have been terrified of this world. A human who looked at apex predators like they were puzzles to be solved. She went to bed that night with more questions than answers. Her evaluation report remained open on her screen, the cursor blinking after her last entry. She added 2 words: "Observation continues." Something was different about this human. Something that went beyond training or experience. She did not know what it was yet, but she was beginning to feel that finding out might change everything she thought she knew about humans, and she was not sure if that thought excited her or terrified her. The emergency alert came during the morning briefing. A pack of Vrex had moved into the western breeding grounds. This area was home to the last surviving colony of lunar moths, a species so rare that their extinction would be a galactic tragedy. The Vrex were not hunting the moths. They were hunting everything else in the area, and their presence would drive away the creatures that the moths needed to survive. Captain Dren called an emergency meeting. Every officer gathered in the command center, their faces showing various degrees of concern. Vrex activity near a protected zone was every preservation officer's nightmare. "Standard protocol," Dren said, his deep voice filling the room. "We establish a monitoring perimeter at safe distance. We document their movements and wait for them to leave naturally. No one approaches the pack. No one engages." Torvan, the young Gorath who had laughed at Tae-sung's arrival, spoke up. "How long do we wait? The breeding season starts in 3 weeks. If the Vrex are still there when the moths begin their cycle, the entire colony could fail. Then we hope they leave before then. And if they do not?" Dren had no answer. Everyone knew what would happen. The Vrex would stay as long as the hunting was good. The moths would fail to breed. Another species would move one step closer to extinction. It had happened before. It would happen again. Vela noticed movement at the back of the room. Tae-sung raised his hand. "Yes, trainee," Dren said. "Request permission to conduct close observation of the Vrex pack." The room went silent. Every eye turned to the human. Vela felt her thorax tighten with something between shock and anger. "Close observation," Dren repeated slowly. "Yes, Captain. I believe direct study of their behavior patterns could help us understand how to move them from the breeding grounds without violence." Torvan laughed. "The human wants to walk up to a Vrex pack and take notes. This should be entertaining." "You would be killed," Vela said. "No one has ever survived proximity to a hunting Vrex pack." "No one has tried while understanding predator psychology," Tae-sung replied. His voice remained calm and even. "The Vrex are intelligent. They make decisions based on information. Right now, they see this area as safe hunting ground with no competition. If we can understand what drives their decision-making, We might find a way to change that calculation. Captain Dren studied the human for a long moment. Vela had worked with the Gorath commander for 15 years. She knew he was weighing options, considering angles that others could not see. Senior Officer Vela, Dren said finally. What is your assessment of the trainee's field performance so far? Vela hesitated. Part of her wanted to dismiss the request immediately. It was reckless and dangerous and went against every protocol in the Corps. But another part remembered the Sketh encounter, the way Tae Sung had read the Predator's intentions, the way he had stood his ground without fear. The trainee has shown unusual aptitude for Predator observation, she said carefully. His field instincts are unexpectedly developed. Dren nodded. Request approved. Supervised reconnaissance only. Senior Officer Vela will accompany the trainee. You will observe from maximum safe distance. You will not approach the pack. You will retreat at the first sign of aggression. Is that understood? Understood, Captain, Tae Sung said. Vela wanted to object, but the decision had been made. She spent the next hour preparing equipment and reviewing Vrek's data with the trainee. He absorbed information quickly, asking specific questions about pack structure, communication methods, and territorial behavior. They entered the jungle at midday. Tae Sung led the way, moving with that same fluid efficiency she had observed during their first field training. But something was different now. His movements were slower, more deliberate. He paused frequently to study tracks and markings on trees. Vrek's scent markers, he said, pointing to scratches on a trunk. Recent. The pack has been expanding their territory. How do you know the marks are recent? The sap is still fresh. The edges have not darkened yet. He knelt to examine the ground. 4 individuals passed here. 2 adults, 2 juveniles. Vela checked her scanner. It confirmed 4 Vrek's biosigns in the area, with size readings matching his assessment. The human had read all of that from scratches on a tree. They moved deeper into Vrek's territory. Tae Sung's behavior changed with each kilometer. He grew quieter, his breathing slowed. His eyes developed a focus that Vela found unsettling. He was not just observing anymore, he was becoming something else. The Vrek's pack came into view near a small clearing. 6 of them, not 4. The scanner had missed 2 that were resting in dense cover. They surrounded a fresh kill, tearing into the carcass with brutal efficiency. Vela's instincts screamed at her to run. Every part of her biology recognized these creatures as death incarnate, 6-limbed horrors with poison spines and teeth that could shred metal. Pack hunters with intelligence that bordered on sapient. They had killed dozens of officers over the years. They feared nothing. Tae Sung did not seem afraid. He crouched behind cover, studying the pack with that intense focus. He watched how they interacted, how they communicated, how they established hierarchy around the kill. The large one with the scarred face, he whispered. That is the alpha. See how the others defer to it? They wait until it has eaten before approaching the kill. Vela forced herself to observe rather than flee. The human was right. The pack dynamics were clear once you knew what to look for. The 2 smallest are juveniles, learning to hunt. The alpha tolerates them but maintains dominance through posture and vocalizations. The other 3 are subordinate adults. They cooperate but also compete for status. Minutes passed. The Vreks finished their meal and began grooming each other. One of the subordinates moved too close to the alpha's preferred spot and received a warning snap that drew blood. Pack hierarchy enforced through calculated violence. Then the wind shifted. One of the juveniles raised its head, its nostrils flared. It had caught their scent. The alert spread through the pack in seconds. 6 pairs of eyes turned toward their hiding spot. 6 bodies tensed for attack. Vela reached for her emergency beacon. Standard protocol was immediate evacuation. Tae Sung stood up. "What are you doing?" Vela hissed. He did not answer. He stepped out of cover, fully exposing himself to the pack. The Vrex Alpha rose to its full height, nearly 3 meters of muscle and poison and death. It made a sound that Vela had never heard before, a challenge, a question. Tae-sung walked forward. Vela wanted to scream, she wanted to run, she wanted to do something, anything, to stop this insanity. But she found herself frozen, watching the impossible unfold. The human took another step toward the most dangerous predators on Theta 7, and for the first time, Vela saw something in his eyes that she recognized. She had seen it in the Vrex Alpha just moments ago, the look of one predator recognizing another. The jungle fell silent. Every creature within hearing distance had frozen at the Vrex Alpha's challenge call, every creature except the human walking toward it. Tae-sung moved with slow, deliberate steps. His arms hung relaxed at his sides. His breathing was so controlled that Vela could barely see his chest move. He kept his eyes fixed on the Alpha, never blinking, never wavering. The Alpha lowered its massive head. Poison spines along its back rose in threat display. It made another sound, deeper than before. A warning, a promise of violence. Tae-sung did not stop. Vela pressed herself against the tree, her emergency beacon clutched in her trembling hands. Every instinct screamed at her to activate it, to call for immediate evacuation, to save herself and leave the foolish human to his fate. But something kept her watching, something that felt like witnessing history. The distance between human and Vrex closed to 20 meters. 15. 10. The Alpha's subordinates spread out, flanking positions for a coordinated attack. The juveniles hung back, watching with the intensity of students learning a vital lesson. This was how the pack dealt with threats. This was how they killed. Tae-sung stopped at 5 meters. For a long moment, nothing moved. The human stood alone before 6 apex predators. No weapons, no armor, no protection of any kind, just soft skin and calm eyes and something that Vela could not name. The Alpha lunged. It was not a full attack. Vela recognized the motion from her studies, a dominance display, a test of nerve. The creature stopped just short of contact, jaws snapping centimeters from the human's face. The message was clear: flee or die. Tae-sung did not flinch. The Alpha pulled back, confusion evident in its body language. It circled to the left, looking for a different angle of approach. Tae-sung turned with it, maintaining that steady eye contact. His posture remained relaxed but balanced. Ready for anything but showing no aggression. The Alpha tried again. Another lunge, another snap of massive jaws, another test. Tae-sung took one step forward. The Vrex stumbled. It actually stumbled, thrown off balance by a response it had never encountered. Prey ran. Prey screamed. Prey showed fear. This creature did none of those things. This creature moved toward death rather than away from it. The subordinates grew restless. One of them started to circle behind the human, seeking the vulnerable back. Tae-sung made a small gesture with his left hand. Not a weapon, not a threat. Just a movement that said, "I know you are there. I am not ignoring you. I am simply not afraid." The subordinate stopped. Minutes passed. The Alpha made 3 more attempts to provoke a fear response. Each time, Tae-sung met the challenge with that same impossible calm. Each time, he held his ground or moved forward. Then something changed. The Alpha made a sound that Vela had never heard documented, a low, rumbling tone that vibrated through the air. The subordinates immediately pulled back, abandoning their flanking positions. The juveniles retreated further into the clearing. The Alpha looked at Tae-sung for a long moment. Its eyes, ancient and intelligent, seemed to be processing something new, something it had never encountered in countless generations of dominance. It stepped back, one step, then another. Then it turned and moved away from the human, returning to the carcass of its earlier kill. The subordinates followed. The juveniles watched the human with what looked almost like curiosity before joining their pack. The Vrex began feeding again. They kept one eye on the human, but their postures had changed. They were not ignoring a threat. They were acknowledging an equal. Tae-sung stood motionless for another full minute. Then he slowly walked backward, never turning away from the pack until he reached Vela's position. "We should go," he said quietly. "I have learned what I needed." Vela could not speak. Her translator implant struggled to process the sounds she was trying to make. Finally, words came. "What did you do?" They moved through the jungle in silence for several minutes before Tae-sung answered. His voice was thoughtful, measured. "Predators communicate through behavior, through body language, through responses to challenge. The Alpha was testing me the same way it tests everything that enters its territory. It needed to know, is this creature prey, competitor, or something else? And what did it decide you were? Something it did not understand, something that responded to aggression without fear and without counter-aggression, something that could not be placed into familiar categories." He paused. "Predators are intelligent, but their intelligence works within patterns. When something breaks those patterns, they become cautious. They prefer known threats over unknown ones." Vela processed this. "You gambled that it would not simply kill you out of caution. It was not a gamble. It was an educated assessment." Tae-sung glanced at her. "The Alpha displayed before attacking. If it intended to kill without warning, it would not have given me time to respond. The display meant it was gathering information. It wanted to understand what I was, before deciding how to proceed." "And if your assessment had been wrong?" For the first time since she had met him, Tae-sung smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it transformed his face in ways Vela could not describe. "Then I would have learned something important in my final moments." They returned to the station as the sun began to set. Word spread quickly. The human had faced a Vrex pack and survived. This time, no one laughed. No one called it luck. Officers who had dismissed him days ago now watched him with something between respect and unease. Captain Dren summoned Tae-sung to his office immediately. Vela was not invited, but she waited in the corridor outside. An hour passed. When Tae-sung finally emerged, his expression was as unreadable as ever. But something in his posture had shifted, a weight lifted, a decision made. "What did the captain want?" Vela asked. Tae-sung looked at her with those calm brown eyes. "He wanted to know what humans really are." "What did you tell him?" The human began walking toward the observation deck. Vela followed, drawn by something she could not explain. "I told him the truth," Tae-sung said. "That we are exactly what we appear to be. And we are something else entirely, and the galaxy will need time to understand the difference." He reached the observation deck and took his usual position at the railing. Below, the jungle stirred with nighttime activity. Somewhere in that darkness, a Vrex pack was adjusting its understanding of the universe. Vela stood beside him for a long time, watching the shadows move. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. Tae-sung did not respond. He simply continued watching the darkness, patient and still, waiting for something only he could see. Captain Dren had not slept in 3 days. The database files on his screen cast pale light across his massive form as he scrolled through record after record. Human history, human biology, human psychology. The more he read, the less he understood, and the more disturbed he became. The door to his office opened. He did not look up. "You wanted to see me, Captain?" Tae-sung's voice was as calm as ever. Dren finally raised his eyes from the screen. The human stood in the doorway, patient and still, waiting. "Sit down," Dren said. Tae-sung took the chair across from the desk. He moved without hurry, settling into position like water finding its level. The Gorath commander studied him for a long moment. I have been researching your species, Dren said. I thought I understood what humans were. Small, soft, emotional. The reports from your first contact described you as harmless vegetarians who had somehow stumbled into space travel. Those reports were not entirely accurate. No, they were not. Dren turned his screen to face the human. Persistence hunting. That is what your scientists call it. Your ancestors did not chase prey like normal predators. You did not catch them with speed or strength. You simply followed them. For hours, for days, until they collapsed from exhaustion, until their hearts gave out from the stress of being hunted by something that never stopped. Tae-sung nodded. It is how we survived. We could not outrun the predators on our world. We could not overpower them. So we became something different, something that did not need to be faster or stronger, just more persistent. Your database says that this hunting method required specific adaptations, the ability to regulate body temperature through sweating, the capacity to run for distances that would kill most species, and something else. Dren leaned forward. The psychological ability to never give up, to keep pursuing a target long after any sensible creature would have stopped. We call it determination, or stubbornness, depending on the context. Dren was quiet for a moment. I have commanded this station for 20 years. I have worked with dozens of species, predators and prey, hunters and gatherers. I thought I understood where humans fit in the hierarchy of life. And now? Now I think I was looking at the wrong hierarchy entirely. The Gorith's voice dropped lower. Your species did not survive Earth by hiding from predators. You survived by becoming something that predators learned to fear, not because you were dangerous in the moment, but because you would never stop coming. Tae-sung did not deny this. He simply waited, as if he had expected this conversation for a long time. The Vrex pack, Dren continued. They did not retreat because you scared them. They retreated because you confused them. You behaved like a predator without acting like a threat. You showed them something they had never evolved to understand. The Vrex are intelligent hunters, but their intelligence is built on patterns, challenge and response. Threat and retreat, predator and prey. I showed them a pattern they could not recognize. The pattern of a persistence predator. Tae-sung inclined his head slightly. Among humans, we have a saying. It is not the wolf that terrifies the sheep. It is the shepherd. The wolf attacks and kills and moves on. The shepherd stays. The shepherd watches. The shepherd never forgets where the sheep are. Dren processed this. His claws tapped against his desk unconsciously. You are telling me that humans are not prey animals that developed intelligence. You are telling me that humans are predators who learn to hide what they are. We learned that being obvious about our nature caused problems. Other species react poorly when they realize what we are capable of. So we developed culture, art, emotion, cooperation. We became the friendly species, the helpful species, the species that smiles and builds things and wants to be friends with everyone. But underneath? Tae-sung's expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted, something ancient and patient and utterly without mercy. Underneath, we are still the creatures that walked our prey to death across endless plains. We are still the species that crossed frozen wastelands and burning deserts because something on the other side needed to be reached. We are still the animals that looked at every predator on our world and said, "You may be faster and stronger, but I will outlast you." Silence filled the office. Dren realized that his fur was standing on end. A deep, primal part of his Gorith instincts was reacting to something in the human's presence. Something that recognized a fellow predator, something that whispered, "Be careful." "Why are you telling me this?" Dren asked. "Because you asked, and because you need to understand what you have in your core now." Tae-sung's voice softened. Humans want to help. We genuinely want to protect species and preserve ecosystems and make the galaxy better. But we do not help by being weak. We help by being strong in ways that other species cannot understand. Strong enough to face Vrex packs alone? Strong enough to face anything, if necessary. Strong enough to keep going when others would stop. Strong enough to pay prices that others cannot imagine. Tae-sung paused. That is what persistence really means. Not just physical endurance. The willingness to sacrifice everything for a goal. The refusal to accept that something is impossible simply because it has never been done. Dren thought about the officers he had lost over the years. Good people who had died because they followed sensible protocols, reasonable limits, acceptable risks. He thought about what might be possible with someone who did not accept limits at all. The breeding grounds, Dren said slowly. The Vrex pack is still there. The moths will fail without intervention. Yes. Standard protocol says we wait. We observe. We hope. Standard protocol assumes that active intervention is impossible. Dren met the human's eyes. Is it impossible? Tae-sung stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the jungle below. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but certain. Nothing is impossible. Some things simply cost more than others. The question is never whether something can be done. The question is whether someone is willing to pay the price to do it. And you are willing? The human turned back to face him. That ancient something still lurked in his eyes. Patient, relentless, inevitable. I came to this station to prove that humans belong in the Preservation Corps. If moving a Vrex pack is what that requires, then that is what I will do. However long it takes. Whatever it costs. Dren felt something he had not experienced in decades. Respect mixed with fear. Admiration mixed with unease. He was looking at a predator. A real one. And for the first time he understood why the galaxy had been so quick to welcome humans as friends. It was much safer than having them as enemies. Rest tonight, Dren said. Tomorrow, we plan. Tae-sung nodded and left the office. Dren sat alone for a long time, staring at the database files on his screen. Persistence hunting, walking prey to death, never stopping, never giving up. He closed the files and made himself a promise. He would never underestimate a human again. No one should. The emergency alarm shattered the evening silence. Red lights flashed through the station corridors as officers scrambled from their quarters. Vela reached the command center within minutes, her hearts pounding with fear she could not name. Captain Dren stood at the central display, his massive form tense with controlled urgency. The holographic map showed the station perimeter. 2 biosigns flickered at the edge of the protected zone, 2 officers outside the shields. Report, Vela demanded. Sensors went offline in Sector 7, Dren said. Officers Torak and Minna went to investigate. The sensors came back online 30 seconds ago. The officers did not return with them. The map updated. 6 red signatures surrounded the 2 blue ones. Vrex, a hunting pack, had caught 2 officers in the open, beyond the protection of the station shields. We need to send a rescue team, Torvin said. He was already reaching for weapons. A rescue team would need to cross 400 meters of Vrex hunting ground, Dren replied. In the dark, against a pack that is already in attack formation. We would lose the rescue team as well. We cannot just leave them out there. I am open to suggestions that do not result in additional deaths. Silence fell over the command center. Everyone knew the mathematics of Vrex encounters. Everyone knew that rescue missions against hunting packs had a survival rate approaching 0. The sensible choice was to wait, to hope, to accept losses as inevitable. Vela noticed that Tae-sung was not in the room. Where is the human trainee? She asked. Officers looked around. Someone checked the corridor. Someone else checked the observation deck. Hana, the human communications officer, walked to a wall panel and entered a command. Airlock 7 just opened, she said quietly. Someone went outside. Vela ran. Her legs carried her through corridors and downstairs faster than she had moved in years. She reached the airlock control room and activated the external cameras with trembling hands. The jungle outside was dark. Bioluminescent plants provided scattered pools of light. Shadows moved between the trees. And walking calmly through that darkness, unarmed and alone, was Tae-sung. "He has lost his mind," Torvin said. He had followed her to the control room. "The Vrex will tear him apart." Vela said nothing. She watched the human move through the jungle with that same fluid efficiency she had observed during training. But something was different now. His movements were smoother, more deliberate, more predatory. The cameras tracked him as he entered Vrex territory. The pack was still circled around the trapped officers. Torak and Minna huddled together behind a fallen tree, their deterrent sprays empty, their voices hoarse from calling for help that would not come. Tae-sung approached without hurry. He moved through the darkness like he belonged there, like the jungle was his natural environment. Like the Vrex were simply obstacles to be navigated. One of the subordinate Vrex noticed him first. It raised its head, nostrils flaring, and made an alert call that echoed through the night. The pack turned. 6 predators focused on the approaching human. The Alpha stepped forward. It was the same scarred creature that Tae-sung had faced before. It recognized the human. That was clear from its body language. It remembered the strange prey that had not run, the creature that had not fit any pattern. Tae-sung stopped 20 meters from the pack. He stood between the Vrex and their escape route back to their main territory. He was not blocking their access to the trapped officers. He was blocking their retreat. The Alpha made its challenge call. The sound was deeper than before, more aggressive. This was not a test. This was a declaration of intent. Tae-sung took one step forward. The Alpha charged, not a display this time. A real attack. 3 tons of muscle and poison and fury launched toward the human at killing speed. Tae-sung did not move. At the last possible moment, he stepped to the side. Not far, just enough. The Alpha's momentum carried it past him. Its claws tore through empty air where the human had been standing. The creature spun, confused and angry. It attacked again, and again Tae-sung was not there when it arrived. He moved with a precision that seemed impossible, always just beyond reach, always calm, always watching. "What is he doing?" Torvan whispered. Vela understood. The realization hit her like a physical blow. "He is not fighting," she said. "He is demonstrating. He is showing them that he cannot be caught, cannot be touched, cannot be stopped." The Alpha tried 3 more times. Each attempt failed. Each failure chipped away at the creature's confidence. The subordinates grew restless, uncertain. Their leader was being humiliated by something that should have been easy prey. Tae-sung began walking toward the trapped officers. Not running, walking. He passed within meters of Vrex that could have killed him with a single strike. None of them moved. They watched him with something that looked like fear. He reached Torak and Minna. The 2 officers stared at him with expressions of pure disbelief. He helped them to their feet without speaking. Then he turned back toward the Vrex pack. The Alpha stood in their path. Its pride would not allow it to simply let them leave. Its instincts demanded that something be done, some price be paid. Tae-sung walked toward the Alpha. He stopped an arm's length away from the creature's massive jaws. He looked up at the predator that had terrorized this jungle for decades, and he spoke in a voice that carried through the night. "Move." The word was simple. The tone was not. It carried something that transcended language, an absolute certainty, an unshakable will. A promise that this would end only one way, and the Vrex could either accept that peacefully or learn it painfully. The Alpha stared at the human for a long moment. Ancient intelligence warred with instinct. Pride battled with something deeper, something that whispered, "This is not prey. This is something else, something that should not be challenged." The Alpha stepped aside. Tae-sung walked past it without looking back. Torak and Minna followed, too shocked to speak. The Vrex pack watched them go, silent and still, their entire understanding of the universe shifted by what they had witnessed. They reached the station airlock 10 minutes later. Captain Dren was waiting. The entire station was waiting. Officers lined the corridors, staring at the human who had walked through a Vrex pack like they were nothing. "Officers delivered," Tae-sung said quietly. He nodded to Dren and walked toward his quarters. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Vela found him an hour later, standing on the observation deck. Below, in the jungle, she could see Vrex's eyes reflecting the station lights. They were further away than usual. Much further. "How did you know they would let you pass?" she asked. Tae-sung was quiet for a moment. "I did not know, but I was willing to find out." That was what mattered. "And if they had attacked? If they had killed you?" He turned to look at her. In the dim light, his eyes held something vast and patient and absolutely certain. "Then they would have learned that killing me would cost them more than letting me pass. That is what it means to be human. We make the price of opposition higher than the price of cooperation. One way or another." Vela understood then. She finally understood what she had been watching all along. The human was not fearless. He was simply willing to pay any price necessary to achieve his goals. That was more terrifying than fearlessness could ever be. She looked out at the distant Vrex eyes, watching the station from the safety of shadows. They had learned. They had finally learned what walks among them now. Something that does not stop. Something that does not quit. Something that will keep coming no matter the cost. Something human. The morning after the rescue, Vela found something that changed everything. She had gone to the eastern perimeter to check on sensor equipment damaged during a storm. The jungle was quiet, still recovering from the night's events. Vrex activity had dropped to near zero across the entire protected zone. The packs were staying away from the station. Far away. That was when she found the body. It was a Vrex, a subordinate from the main hunting pack, based on its markings. It lay sprawled on the forest floor, its 6 limbs splayed at odd angles. There were no wounds, no signs of attack, no indication of what had killed it. Vela scanned the creature with her equipment. The results made no sense. Extreme muscular exhaustion. Cardiac failure from sustained stress. Dehydration despite ample water sources nearby. The Vrex had been run to death. She searched the surrounding area and found tracks, human boot prints. They circled the dead Vrex in a pattern that told a story. The human had followed the creature, not chased it, followed, for kilometers, through jungle and swamp and rocky terrain, hour after hour, never stopping, never losing the trail. The Vrex had tried to escape. It had run and hidden and doubled back and used every trick that generations of predator evolution had given it. None of it mattered. The human had kept coming. Patient, relentless, inevitable. Eventually, the Vrex's heart had simply given out. The stress of being hunted by something that would not stop had killed it more surely than any weapon. Vela stood over the body for a long time. She thought about everything she had learned since the human arrived. The stillness, the patience, the absolute determination. She had been watching a predator all along, a different kind of predator than the galaxy had ever known. She did not tell anyone what she found. Some truths were too heavy to share casually. The ceremony was held that afternoon. Captain Dren had arranged it with unusual speed. The entire station gathered in the main hall as Tae-sung stood before them in a fresh uniform. "Park Tae-sung," Dren said formally. You came to this station as a trainee. You leave it as something else entirely. Your actions have saved lives, protected endangered species, and proven that humans have a place in the Preservation Corps. Dren removed an insignia from his own uniform, the symbol of a full officer. He pinned it to Tae-sung's chest with careful precision. By the authority granted to me, I grant you full officer status. You have earned it. You have earned more than I know how to express. Applause filled the hall. Officers who had mocked the human now clapped with genuine respect. Torvan, who had laughed at his arrival, led the cheering. Even Vela found herself joining in. Tae-sung accepted the honor with his usual calm. He thanked the captain and the station and said nothing about what he had endured to reach this moment. Humility wrapped around capability like armor. Later, when the ceremony had ended and most officers had returned to their duties, Vela found Tae-sung on the observation deck. Hana was there too. The two humans stood side by side, watching the jungle below. Vela approached quietly. She needed to understand something. She needed to hear it from them. "The others have been wondering," she said. "They have been asking why humans seem so different from what the first contact reports described. So soft, so emotional, so controlled." Hana smiled. It was the same knowing expression she had worn when Tae-sung first arrived. "They have been asking that since we joined the galactic community." "Then tell me, what are humans really?" Hana looked at Tae-sung. Some silent communication passed between them. Then she turned back to Vela. "We are exactly what we seem to be," Hana said. "Emotional, social, creative. We love art and music and stories. We cry at sad endings and laugh at good jokes. We form bonds with other species and genuinely care about their well-being. But that is not all you are." "No." Hana's smile faded slightly. "That control you mentioned, that softness, those are not weaknesses. They are choices. We choose to be gentle because we know what happens when we are not." "What happens?" Tae-sung spoke for the first time. "We dominated our planet, every ecosystem, every predator, every challenge. We did not do it by being the strongest or fastest. We did it by being the most persistent, the most adaptable, the most willing to pay any price for victory. That is not how the galaxy sees you. That is intentional." Tae-sung turned to face her. "When humans first discovered other intelligent life, we made a choice. We could show the galaxy what we truly were and spend eternity being feared and fought. Or we could show them what we wanted to be and earn friendship instead of conquest. Vela processed this. You hide your nature deliberately. We do not hide it. We simply lead with our better qualities, the determination, the persistence, the capacity for violence. Those are still there, but we prefer to use them only when necessary. Like last night. Like last night." Vela looked out at the jungle. The wreck's eyes that had watched the station every night were gone now. The packs had moved away, deep into territory where the human could not follow easily. They had learned their lesson. "The galaxy will discover what you are eventually," she said. "Yes," Tae-sung agreed. "But by then they will also know us as friends, as partners, as protectors. When they finally see the persistence predator beneath the friendly surface, they will understand that we use it to keep them safe, not to threaten them. You hope. We choose to believe. That is also something humans do well." Silence fell between them. The jungle sounds filled the gap. Somewhere in the distance, a Vrex made a call that echoed through the trees, a warning to its pack. Stay away. Something new walks here, something that does not stop. Vela had one more question, one she had been afraid to ask. "The creature I found this morning, the Vrex that died of exhaustion, was that you?" Tae-sung did not answer immediately. He looked at the jungle for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but certain. It was following the officers during the rescue, tracking them, planning to attack from behind when they relaxed. I could not allow that. So you hunted it. I followed it until it stopped being a threat. That is what my ancestors did. That is what I did. It was necessary. Vela should have felt disturbed. She should have been frightened by this confirmation of everything she suspected. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Safe. She felt safe standing next to this human who could walk predators to death, because she knew that same terrible capability would be used to protect her, to protect the station, to protect everything the Preservation Corps stood for. I was wrong about you, she said again, the same words she had spoken days ago, but they meant something different now. Tae-sung looked at her. Those calm brown eyes held depths she was only beginning to understand. Most species are, he said. At first, he returned to watching the jungle, patient, still, ready for whatever came next. Vela stood beside him, watching the darkness where apex predators now feared to tread. The galaxy would learn, she realized. Slowly, one encounter at a time. They would learn that humans were not the soft, harmless newcomers everyone assumed. They were something far more valuable. They were the species that chose to be kind. And that choice, made by creatures capable of being anything else, was the most powerful thing in the universe.